The X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I am your host. I am your guide as together we cross this time-space continuum to this place that I call the X-Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X-Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 6 p.m. until, are you ready for this? 10 p.m. right here on the all-new X-Zone Broadcast Network, the IPBN Radio Network, and, of course, on the Mutual Broadcast Network. If you'd like to send an email, it's very simple. X-Zone at XZoneRadioTV.com, on all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV, and our radio website, where you can find out what we've been doing, what we are doing, and what we intend on doing in the future, is www.XZoneRadio.com. It has been one of the weirdest weekends going, X-Zone Nation. As you know, there has been problems in the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom is seceding from the European Union, and that is causing financial chaos around the world. And we can expect it to get a lot worse. You have the presidential nominees who are, basically crucifying each other because they think that they can actually use this to their advantage, and I really don't think they can. Mind you, when it comes to Secretary Clinton, with all her expertise, shouldn't she have seen this coming? Now, Donald Trump said that he could see this coming, and he was dead on. So what does this tell us about the political arena in the United States? Well, let's see. In my opinion, it is a three-ring circus. You've got... Let me see, you've got only two rings now because the third ring, Bernie Sanders, is no longer there, and yet you've got two smaller rings that are trying to grow to be part of the big tent attraction. So what will happen? Who knows? But the way I see it, the United States of America, like any other country, is a business. And as such, it should be run as a business by people who know what the heck they're doing when it comes to running a business. Now, Secretary Clinton, let me see, what has she got under her belt? Well, she's got the Benghazi affair. She has questionable funding. She has an illegal email server in her house that has been found to have classified documents on it. And yet she seems to think that this is fine, like she can do it. What will this tell us about the Clinton administration if it gets that far? Personally, I think it's going to be a disaster. But what do I know? I talk to people who see aliens, who fly on Battlestar ships, who see angels, talk to angels. Yeah. Who am I to argue? Huh. Coming up on tonight's show, X-Zone Nation, my first guest in a few moments is going to be Michael-Cremo. He is an internationally known authority and speaker on archaeological anomalies and extreme human antiquity. He is the best-selling author and research association. He specializes in the history and philosophy of science. He is a member of the World Archaeological Congress and the European Association of Archaeologies. And there's the new book that he has out. It's entitled Science and Religion, Existential Synthesis. Microfossils, genomes, avatars, clairaudience, epiphany, hard science, and spiritual mysticism appear to be moving along irreconcilable tracks. But could these divergent paths somehow intersect by design or chance? Well, this is one of the questions we're going to ask Michael when he joins us on the other side of this break. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. Now, once again, if you'd like to send me an email, it's xzone@xzoneradiotv.com or here in the studio to studio@xzoneradiotv.com. You can always check us out on our social media network pages, and they're all X-Zone Radio TV, and our main website at www.xzoneradiotv.com. This first hour of tonight's show, Michael-Cremo is my guest, and Michael will be with me on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Where? Well, right here on the Mutual Broadcast Network, the all-new IPBN network, and the X-Zone Broadcast Network. My name is Rob McConnell. Michael-Cremo is up next with me. Don't go away. Welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Once again, if you would like to send us an email, it's xzone@xzoneradiotv on all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And you can always check us out on our website at www.xzoneradio.com. My guest this hour is Michael-Cremo, and we're going to be talking to Michael about his new book, Science and Religion. And Michael has also been known as the Forbidden Archaeologist. He is hailed as a groundbreaking research pioneer and international authority on archaeological anomalies. His landmark bestseller, Forbidden Archaeology, first published in 1993, already translated into 26 languages, challenged the very foundation of Darwinism evolution. Michael continues to, if you'll excuse the pun, dig up enigmatic discoveries in the fossil record and shake up accepted paradigms, exploring famous archaeological sites around the world, journeying to sacred places in India, and appearing on national television shows in the United States and other countries, lecturing at mainstream science conferences, or speaking to alternative gatherings of the global intelligent media world. Joining me now is Michael-Cremo. Michael, welcome back to the X-Zone.
Good to be with you and all your listeners.
My goodness, Michael, you are such a busy man, but here we have another book by Michael-Cremo, Science and Religion. Tell us about it.
The title is My Science, My Religion. It's a collection of 24 papers that I've presented at mainstream scientific conferences about my work, which many people find very unusual because the kinds of things I talk about to my different audiences, including my scientific audience, are very much contrary to the current accepted theories about human origins and antiquity. And not only that, I'm very open that my ideas are inspired by a spiritual or a religious source. You know, for example, the spiritual texts of ancient India say that humans have existed for many millions of years on this planet. Modern science says we've only been around for about 200,000 years, having evolved from more primitive ape-like human ancestors. But in my work, I've shown that there's actually archaeological evidence that supports what my sources of spiritual inspiration tell me, namely that humans like us have existed for many millions of years. There are reports of archaeologists discovering human bones, human artifacts, and human footprints going back many millions of years. So I talk about this not only on shows like this or and to alternative science groups. I also go to the mainstream scientific conferences and present my ideas in which I integrate my science and my religion. So if people are interested to see exactly how I do that at these scientific conferences, they might be interested in this latest book of mine, My Science, My Religion. And I also get not only into the archaeological evidence for extreme human antiquity, my spiritual sources also tell me that as human beings, we're not just machines made of molecules, which is what most scientists now believe. We're simply machines made of matter. We're machines made of molecules in competition with each other for survival. My spiritual sources tell me, no, that's not all there is to it. We are beings of pure consciousness originally, and that consciousness is not produced by matter. Most scientists today believe that consciousness is produced by chemicals in the brain. I don't think that's true. I think consciousness has its own separate existence apart from the brain, apart from matter, apart from molecules. And there's a lot of scientific evidence that supports that, which I also present at scientific conferences. So in my scientific work, I integrate my spirituality, which goes against the present trend where many scientists feel you've got to keep your science and your spirituality completely separate. But I don't think that's true. It hasn't been true historically. There have been many scientists in the past who have integrated their spirituality, their religion, and their science, and I think it's still possible today.
Michael, are we seeing science and the metaphysical world finally agreeing on things?
I think a portion of the scientific world is open to such possibilities. Another part of it, a very influential part, is made up of what I would call the fundamentalist materialist, and they're very much opposed to any suggestion like that. Of course, they want to keep everything limited to ordinary matter operating under known physical and chemical laws.
Right.
And that's okay in one sense, but what they tend to rule out is any kind of non-material substance. In other words, they wouldn't accept the existence of consciousness apart from matter. They would say, no, consciousness is produced by matter when you organize matter in a sufficiently complex way in the brain, and when at the time of death that matter becomes disorganized, they would say there is no more consciousness. There isn't any conscious self that survives the death experience. But I would disagree with that. And another thing they object to is the idea that there might be not only individual conscious selves, but some kind of universal conscious self that is the source of all the individual conscious selves. And that universal consciousness, that supreme consciousness, might be responsible for some of the order and complexity that we observe in the world around us. They don't like that idea very much. So they're very much opposed to both of these things, the idea that there's some kind of intentionality and purpose and design to the universe and the life forms within it, or they're also opposed to the idea of any kind of non-material substance, any kind of soul or conscious self that would survive the death experience. and they want to conduct their science strictly on a material basis. And I would say if they choose to do that, that's fine, but they should admit that their science doesn't deal with everything that's possibly true about the world we live in. Either it's true or it's not true that there is a conscious self that is non-material. Either it's true or it's not true that there is some higher intelligence that is perhaps responsible for some of the order and complexity that we observe around us. So I think a real science should be dealing with everything that's possibly true about the world that we live in. And some scientists are open to that, but many are not. And those who are not are currently in the majority.
Exonation, Michael-Cremo is my special guest this hour. We're talking about Michael's new book. And Michael, I'm sorry when I pronounced the name of your book wrong. The name of the book is My Science, My Religion. And you can always find out more about Michael on his website at www.mcremo.com. Or, here's a new one, www.mysciencemyreligion.com. So when we look at psychic phenomenon, Michael, how does this relate to science now with all these new findings?
Well, many people think that psychic phenomena are just beyond the world of science. They think it's not part of the world of science. But if we actually look at the history of science, we'll see that some of the greatest scientists in the world have been involved in research into the paranormal or the psychic. For example, we could look at the lives of Marie and Pierre Curie. They lived in Paris, France, early in the 20th century. They were husband and wife. They both got Nobel Prizes in physics for their discovery of radium.
Yes.
And, this is something that, any high school physics textbook will tell the students about. That, especially Marie Curie is very famous because she's one of the prominent female scientists in the history of science. And you read about her work in discovering radium in the physics textbooks. What you don't read is that she and her husband were involved in research into the paranormal. They were part of a group of very prominent scientists in Paris early in the 20th century who were engaged in such research. They were specifically engaged in researching mediums. And mediums are people who have paranormal powers like telepathy or telekinesis, mind over matter. So the Curies were part of a group of prominent scientists who were investigating a medium named Eusapia Palladino early in the 20th century. The research was carried out at the Psychology Institute in Paris. And on one occasion, in the laboratory, under perfect conditions of observation, Pierre Curie, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, said that in the presence of this woman, Eusapia Palladino, a large table was floating in the air in the middle of the laboratory. And they were measuring how high it was floating, how long it was floating in the air. And all of the scientists present, including 5 Nobel Prize winners, stated that these phenomena are absolutely true.
All right, Michael, we've got to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Please stand by. Exonation. Michael-Cremo is my special guest this hour, a good friend of the Exxon. Michael has a new book out that is going to shake a lot of people, like all his books do. My Science, My Religion, www.mysciencemyreligion.com. Michael-Cremo is my guest, and we'll both be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the Exxon from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada.
Mutual Broadcast News.
All right, Michael, hold on. We've got a 4-minute news break here.
Okay.
Nice talking to you again, my friend. Congratulations on yet another great book.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Yeah, all right, Michael, stand by, sir.
Their safety and whether women who use them could face child abandonment charges. 6 hospitals in Arizona have installed drawers in their emergency rooms that allow women to drop off infants anonymously, although state law neither authorizes nor prohibits them. Nearly 2 months after a woman was found severely burned on the Crow Indian Reservation, the tribe is still seeking information about the case from federal investigators. The victim was found on April 17th in a field near the border between the Northern Cheyenne and Crow Reservation with burns over most of her body. Doctors told the woman's family she had walked about 3 miles before collapsing. Reservation residents believe the woman was set on fire. Mutual Broadcast News. Depend on it.
Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, on the X-Zone TV show, coming soon to screens of all sizes. On the X-Zone TV show, we'll investigate UFOs, ghosts, alien abductions, demonic possession, psychic phenomenon, angels, lake monsters, Bigfoot, unsolved mysteries, and all subject matter from within the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology, and much, much more. The X-Zone TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, www.xzonetv.com, is a Relmar McConnell media company and Airplay Media production.
You're listening to the X-Zone Radio Show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, www.xzoneradiotv.com.
I'm William S. Peckham. If you enjoy a good mystery with a touch of the paranormal, then you'll love my novel, From Out of the Woodwork. It's the story of a young Toronto contractor, Sean Kennedy, who buys derelict homes, guts them, and turns them into multifamily dwellings. Slums just waiting to happen. When Sean buys 29 Livery Lane, the house fights back. Former owners unexpectedly come out of the woodwork as he starts the destruction. The apparitions come to him when he touches old books, reads hidden letters, rummages through old boxes, finds a locket, or reads a discovered manuscript of a murder mystery. From Out of the Woodwork will take you from 1899 to the horror of the World Trade Center, September 11, 2001. Check out From Out of the Woodwork on my website, www.williamspeckham.com.
If your credit card bills have gotten out of hand, call Consolidated Credit now. If you're making the minimum payments, but your balance is just not going down, call Consolidated Credit now. If the interest rates on your credit cards are so high, it will take years and years to get out of debt. Call Consolidated Credit now.
800-750-8583.
They've helped over 5 million people with credit card debt. They can consolidate your debts into one lower payment, reduce your interest rates, and get you out of debt fast. If you're struggling with credit card debt, Consolidated Credit Programs will teach you how to get out and stay out of debt.
Call 800-750-8583. 800-750-8583. That's 800-750-8583.
Consolidated Credit Counseling Services Incorporated, 5701 West Sunrise Boulevard, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 33313. Not a loan company. Licensed by the New York Department of Financial Services and by the Vermont Department of Financial Regulation. Maryland DM 19, Oregon DM 80031. Services are primarily educational in nature.
Welcome back, everyone. Michael-cremo is my special guest of this hour. We're talking about Michael's new book, My Science, My Religion. The website is www.mysciencemyreligion.com. Michael, tell us about the papers that explain paranormal research.
One thing I wanted to do when I presented these papers at conferences on consciousness studies was give scientists some idea of the real history of science. Because they tend to think that, the paranormal is something forbidden in the world of science. But it hasn't really always been like that. One of the papers I presented was about the work of a famous English scientist, Alfred Russel Wallace, who lived in the 19th century. He was a prominent English biologist, and he was, along with Darwin, the co-founder of the theory of evolution by natural selection. Actually, Darwin had been working on his book, The Origin of Species, for about 20 years in England, and he kept delaying the publication of it. He kept working on it, trying to perfect it, and then one day he got in the mail a letter from Wallace, this young English scientist, and the letter was very surprising and shocking to Darwin because in the letter, Wallace explained that he wanted Darwin to read a paper that he was going to present at a meeting of a scientific society in London. It was called the Linnaean Society. And in this paper, Wallace laid out the theory of evolution by natural selection. It was the same theory that Darwin had been thinking about. So Darwin was shocked because the way things work in the world of science is the first person who presents a theory gets his name put on it. So Wallace had written up a paper about the theory of evolution by natural selection and was going to present it at a scientific society in London. So Darwin, trying to save his own reputation, proposed, well, actually I've been thinking of the same idea, so why don't we both present papers at this scientific meeting in London, and that way we'll both get credit for the theory. So Wallace agreed, and they both presented their papers at this scientific conference in 1859, and for a long time, the theory of evolution was called the Wallace-Darwin theory of evolution. So you may wonder, well, why is it that it's no longer called the Wallace-Darwin theory? It's just called the Darwin theory of evolution. It's because Wallace became involved in research into the paranormal. He was joined in his research by another prominent English scientist, Sir William Crookes, who was a physicist, and he was also president of the Royal Society, which is England's topmost scientific organization. So these two prominent English scientists, Wallace and Crookes, were doing research with mediums. Mediums, as I mentioned before, are people who have paranormal powers. So they were researching a medium named Daniel Dunglass Hume, and they found he had psychokinetic abilities, mind over matter abilities. Now this may seem a little bit unusual, but this medium, Hume, had the ability to take a musical instrument, an accordion, and he could hold it with one hand at the side, at the top of it, opposite the keys on the accordion. And just holding the instrument like that, it would play very elaborate tunes, although he wasn't touching the keys of the accordion at all. So Wallace and Crooks thought, okay, maybe he's got a trick instrument. So they went out to a music shop and they bought a brand new accordion that Hume had never seen or touched, and they used that in their experiments with him. And they decided, okay, maybe somehow or other he's like a magician. He's getting his other hand down on the keys in such a way that we really can't detect it. So to prevent that, they built a cage, and they made him hold the accordion in a cage so that he couldn't get his other hand through the cage to touch the accordion.
They were taking no chances with this guy.
Yeah, and in that condition, under those experimental conditions, he could still cause the accordion to play very elaborate tunes. And then they, both of them saw that Hume took his one hand out of the cage, and the accordion was simply floating in the cage all by itself, playing very elaborate tunes. And they wrote a scientific report to their colleagues about this. Now you have to ask, why would these two prominent scientists, a president of the Royal Society and the co-founder of the theory of evolution by natural selection, report these things? You know, did they have some kind of psychological death wish that they wanted all their colleagues to think they'd gone completely crazy? Or did they report it because that's what they actually observed? I think that is what they actually observed. And on other occasions, both of these scientists, Wallace and Crooks, observed levitations by Hume. Now, we know that magicians can perform the illusion of a levitation.
Yes.
But it requires some apparatus, it requires some compatriots, you know, some people to assist in the illusion. But in these instances where Crooks and Wallace observed these levitations, they very carefully guarded against anything like that. They would go to Hume's apartment unannounced and say, "Come with us, just you, right this minute." And they would take him to some place he'd never been before, the home of some English nobleman or scientist, and just without giving him time to prepare any apparatus at all, you know, he would simply be standing in the middle of a room among these people, and he would rise into the air, and they would feel all around him, no wires, nothing, no apparatus. So sometimes people don't understand what the actual history of science is. What we get in the textbooks today is a very sanitized, edited view of what the real history of science is. And I think if more people were aware of the work that great scientists have done, including work on the paranormal, like telekinesis and telepathy and things of that sort, then there would be less resistance to such research today.
So why do you think science, mainstream science, has been not willing to accept or willing to treat metaphysical science or the paranormal as something worthwhile to investigate?
Well, I think there are a lot of reasons for that, but I think it has something to do with some decisions that were made early in the 20th century when governments and big corporations began giving huge amounts of money to scientists. They started giving huge amounts of money to scientists because they wanted weapons. Governments started giving money because they wanted weapons for their militaries, and corporations started giving money because they wanted consumer products and pharmaceuticals that they could sell for huge profits. So when all of this money started coming into the world of science, and they began to want not just individual scientists who would do their own individual scientific research going wherever it led, they wanted huge teams of scientists to be working in labs producing research that would lead to weapons, like the atomic bomb during World War II. They wanted research that would lead to the development of consumer products that could be sold by corporations. They wanted pharmaceuticals that could be sold by the big drug companies, and it required huge teams of scientists to work on these projects. And they decided, okay, we're going to focus on that and not so much on these other things that were a little more spooky, you could say, but were actually a part of the reality that many prominent scientists were studying. So I think it also has to do with the fact that modern science has chosen to give some very materialistic definitions of who we are and what we are. As I mentioned a little bit earlier in the show, they define us as machines made of molecules in competition with each other for survival. And if you define people's existence, their identity, in a very, very materialistic way, then their goals and values tend to become extremely materialistic. And they think that to produce and consume more and more material things is the main purpose of human life. And that process of material production and consumption generates wealth. And there are political and financial and cultural and social institutions that are all based on that never-ending process of material production and consumption,
right,
which goes on in an organized way. If people had a different conception of the self, if they understood, well, I'm not just a machine made of molecules, I'm a being of pure consciousness, and all others are beings of pure consciousness, they would have different values, different goals and objectives in life, and they would perhaps begin to think, well, maybe I shouldn't be so much involved in all the financial and political and social institutions that are connected with all this material production and consumption, and organizing people into competing groups and things like that. They might start putting more of their human energy, taking it out of that system of material production and consumption and putting it more into developing harmonious patterns of living based on satisfying material needs in the most simple, natural, and efficient way possible, while putting more energy into developing the resource of consciousness. And that would be very bad for the current political and financial and economic institutions that are dominating the world.
Exonation, our guest this hour is Michael Cremo. Once again, Michael has a new book out that's entitled My Science, My Religion, and it's available at, for more information on Michael, I should say, he has two great websites, www.mcremo.com, as well as mysciencemyreligion.com. And, of course, my personal favorite is forbiddenarchaeologist.com. Michael, has there been any new spectacular finds that have shaken the archaeological roots lately?
Well, yes, there have been some interesting ones. They might not be making the headlines all over the world, but there have been some discoveries that show why I call my topic forbidden archaeology. Now, this may seem like a very minor discovery, but last year at Olduvai Gorge in the country of Tanzania in East Africa, archaeologists discovered a finger bone. Now, that may not seem like a major discovery, but they very carefully studied this finger bone, and they compared the measurements to the finger bones of different species of apes and monkeys, different species of ape men like Australopithecus and Homo habilis, and they also compared the measurements of this finger bone with the finger bones of modern humans. And they found that the measurements matched those of anatomically modern human beings. They were, in other words, the finger bone did not match the finger bones from any kind of ape or monkey or any kind of ape man like Australopithecus or Homo habilis. It was in the modern human type. But the problem was it was found in layers of rock 1,840,000 years old.
Wow.
So most scientists now believe that humans like us first came into existence less than 200,000 years ago. So the scientists in their report, which was published in a very prominent scientific journal called Nature Communications.
Michael, we're going to have to do a bit of a cliffhanger here. I have to take my final break. Exonation, Michael-Cremo is our special guest, www.mcremo.com. And he's the author of a new book, My Science, My Religion, www.mysciencemyreligion.com.
His latest book, The Science of Magic Book of Mysteries, Volume 1, is the first book in a series based on her writings that open every episode of the Science of Magic radio show. Drawing on the subject matter of each guest and armed with over 40 years' experience in shamanism, 35 years in alternative health, and degrees in psychology and religious studies, Gwilda introduces relevant and leading-edge information that supports spiritual evolution and personal empowerment. Rich with wisdom and inspirational quotes packaged in digestible segments, this is a book that will pull you from cover to cover. It will also serve as a daily inspirational reading for years to come. The Science of Magic Book of Mysteries, Volume 1, is available at our website, tsompublications.com, amazon.com, and wherever fine books are sold. You're listening to the X-Zone Radio Show on the Mutual Broadcast Network and the all-new IPBN Radio Network. Named one of the world's greatest psychics, Elizabeth Joyce is now giving readings worldwide via Skype. Elizabeth Joyce is recognized for her clairvoyant ability to help find missing persons, her analysis of dreams, past life regression work, mediumship, and her accurate predictions. Elizabeth has been a frequent guest on the X-Zone Radio Show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, now for several years. For an appointment with Elizabeth Joyce, call 201-934-8986 or Skype at elizabeth.joyce. And for more information, you can always visit Elizabeth Joyce online at www.new-visions.com. Introducing Just Like Sugar. Just Like Sugar is a wonderful natural zero-calorie sweetener alternative for those health-conscious people who choose a calorie-restricted diet with a great pure sweet flavor that tastes just like sugar. Just Like Sugar is a great natural option for people suffering from diabetes and may be used in restricted diet programs where standard sugars are not allowed and does not cause a laxative effect of some other sweeteners. Just Like Sugar enhanced composition is a source of natural dietary fiber obtained from the chicory root. Just Like Sugar comprises a perfect blend chicory maltodextrin, pure balanced extract, chicory root dietary fiber, and all the natural flavors from the peel of the orange. Just Like Sugar is a natural alternative to harmful artificial sweeteners and will change the way that you believe all natural sweetener products taste. Just Like Sugar is now available at your local Whole Foods markets, Wild Oats markets, and many other fine natural food stores in the U.S., Canada, and worldwide.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. My special guest this hour is Mr. Michael Cremo, www.mcremo.com. And he's the author of a new book, My Science, My Religion, that is published by Torchlight Publishing. And that website for the book is www.mysciencemyreligion.com. First of all, Michael, as always, time goes by so fast when you're with us. Where can listeners get a copy of your book?
They can go to my website, mcremo.com, mcremo.com, and it's also available, through other sources as well, Amazon,
sure,
and Kindle, and like that.
Michael, it's amazing to find out that even in today, the year 2016, that people are still making archaeological finds that are shaking the very roots of history.
Yeah, we were talking about one before the break. At Olduvai Gorge, archaeologists found a finger bone in layers of rock 1,840,000 years old. And they did extensive measurements and studies of it. They said it's just like a Homo sapiens, a modern human finger bone. But they said in their report something very amazing. They said, we can't call it Homo sapiens because of the age of the layers of rock in which it was found. In other words, because they think humans like us came about only recently, maybe 200,000 years ago or less, even when they've got evidence for a very ancient human presence staring them right on the face, they can't recognize it for what it really is. They have to say, well, this is human, but we can't call it human. Another interesting discovery like that took place just this year. Scientists reported finding some stone circles in a cave in southern France at a place called Bruniquel. And they said these stone circles that they found in these caves were about 180,000 years old. And they said, well, although it would have taken a lot of intelligence to enter into this dark cave and take hundreds of pieces of stone and arrange them in a circle, it would require, there was about 2 tons worth of stones that were arranged in these elaborate circles. That would have required light, it would have required intelligence, it would have required social organization. And they said, well, but we can't say humans made it because humans weren't around at that time in Europe. they think only the Neanderthals were around. But actually, in my work, in my book, Forbidden Archaeology, I've documented many cases of human discoveries of human bones and human artifacts showing that humans like us were present millions of years ago in Europe. So these discoveries keep on coming, but scientists don't recognize them for what they really are.
Michael, I hate to say so long to you, but we've run out of time. I want to thank you so much. Continued success. And Exonation, if you'd like more information on Michael Cremo, visit him online at www.mcremo.com. I'll be back after this commercial break. Don't go away.